our offensive line can protect them. We'll move on to the Colts, and Shane Steichen has been brought in to essentially develop. I think it's a rerun, come in and run it back in terms of what he's done with Jalen Hurts, and can he do that with their quarterback, in which they picked with the fourth pick of the first round, Anthony Richardson, who again I think has flaws, and I think he is very much of the Jalen Hurts type of quarterback, and I think ultimately he will be a great quarterback in the league. But I think there could be a lot of teething problems early on, and the Colts team, that look at what they've done in free agency, and not a massive lot. I don't think they get a lot of cap to play with. Isaiah McKenzie's a serviceable wide receiver. Bonacam come in again, defensive end, is looking up serviceable, but not a lot. And people would say the Colts had a lot of good players last year that just didn't produce because things weren't right there. But I think ultimately, again, it's a scenario where it's going to come down to the new head coach and what he can get out of quarterback. I think the level of expectation with the Colts this year, I don't think it would be quite high, which is a surprise because for years they've been up there. And a couple of years ago, we're only a couple of years removed from when Carson Wentz was playing against the Jags to put them in the Super Bowl. And yeah, here we are coming off a 4-win season. The expectations are so low for the new head coach. It's the only way is up in a division that, as we touched on pre-record, year in, year out is up and down, with the exception maybe of the Titans. So, Conor, I'll go to you first. Is that fair? Do you think the Colts are in for a big bounce back season, or do you think it's going to be a bit of a growing pain scenario early on?
Well, and you mentioned Shane Steichen and a very young staff that he's assembled there as well. Like he's really going for quite an intriguing and exciting coaching team there. He's hired Jim Bob Cooter, the coach with the best name in the NFL for my money, as his offensive coordinator. And I double checked this just to be sure. He's still absurdly young for a guy who seems to have been around as long as he has. He's only 38. And he's had stints, of course, with Peyton Manning, with Matthew Stafford, with Trevor Lawrence. He's worked under Frank Reich and Doug Peterson. It's a guy who knows how to develop a quarterback and has had time with some of the best to ever do it and has gotten really good results with them. On paper, he's a very good choice to work with Richardson, and I'd be intrigued to see how that works out. Richardson looks like that kind of high risk, high reward player. We've seen some of his tapes, seen his workout before the draft. He's got an incredible arm, like an absolute cannon. Times has accuracy issues, as is often the case when a player has kind of prodigious physical gifts like that. It's kind of hard to get the crosshairs in sometimes. But the Colts, to me, are the example that if I was a Packers fan would terrify me, because you have this amazing handoff from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck, and then after that, after that decades of Hall of Fame level quarterback play, they bounced around from quarterback to quarterback, from subpar quarterback to subpar quarterback, perhaps with the honourable exception of Phillip Rivers. Let's be fair. And as you were saying, Brian, not that long removed from Carson Wentz, potentially taking them to the playoffs and on a run before they kind of spectacularly imploded. They're another one of those franchises, though. We've just finished talking about the Texans. Jim Irsay, as owner, has been a man to make some questionable decisions, not least last year, and bringing in Jeff Saturday as head coach and shipping Frank Reich out the door. Like, what was going on there? Entertaining and all as it was. But they've got a lot of good players there. You got the likes of DeForest Buckner knocking around, who I've almost forgotten was a Colt. We'll see whether Jonathan Taylor gets back to his best after injury. You'd kind of think they probably need him to be. And they've got a decent wide receiver room there. They've got players that they can put around Anthony Richardson to give him a chance to succeed. They're certainly not in worse. They've been in worse positions over the last couple of years than they are now, in my view. And again, it's not the most demanding division and hasn't been the most demanding division over the last couple of years. So the bar they need to get over is not as high as it would be elsewhere.
Colin, do you think certain coaches would have to be sold and going to Indianapolis? I know for Steichen, it's his first opportunity to be a head coach in the league, but bearing in mind how Frank Reich got treated at the end, Chris Barrett seems to be under pressure. You never know from one season to the next what's going to come from this owner. Have the Colts fallen away from a team that were looked upon as the kind of place you'd want to go and coach there and potentially even play there?
Maybe for some, but I think I had the good fortune to have a really good conversation with Zach Kiefer. And while Zach has obviously moved on now to kind of being a national features writer, he's obviously, coming off the back of being the Colts beat writer for so long. And a lot of this ultimately goes back to what happened with Andrew Luck and the way in which kind of that played out. And that still kind of plagues, I suppose, Jim Irsay. And we will see. Like, last year was an unmitigated disaster. And realistically, they shouldn't, like, when Irsay got involved, right, and to move off of Carson Wentz and everything that went, Frank Reich should have just moved on from Frank Reich at that point as well. Because ultimately his position was untenable, and that's so it proved. Now, bringing in Jeff Saturday didn't help anything. I really like the Shane Steichen hire. I'm probably this division has probably my favorite kind of head coaching hires from this particular round. I think the work that he did with Justin Herbert. We forget that sometimes that it isn't just the Jalen Hurts that he has developed. Like, that first season from Herbert, that is why Justin Herbert is talked about as every year taking the step into the pantheon, because we saw in that first season when he came in, and a lot of that was down to Steichen. So I think he can work with Anthony Richardson. I think that pick made a lot of sense. But I do think you have a very valid point, Brian, around the weapons. I don't know if the weapons are there. I think what will be interesting to see with the O-line is the O-line is basically returning, right? Last year, we expected huge things from the O-line, and they absolutely fundamentally disappointed. They're basically returning the same. Was it just a down year with all of the changes that were going on, or are the players, is there slippage there? Also with Jonathan Taylor, we will have to see what happens there. Everyone expected, he was probably, in fantasy football terms, I'd say was number one pick for most people in various leagues. He really disappointed last year. So he was coming off the back where he probably thought he was going to maybe reset the running back market. Now we've seen the running back market, isn't there. So what does the second contract look like? Are the Colts going to go down that route? There are a lot of questions there, but I do think I get why they made the decision to go with Steichen. I get why they made the decision to go with Anthony Richardson. I think it's going to take time to develop it. I don't expect it to be this year, but it makes sense what they've gone with. They finally have moved away from the quick fix, right? That's what they kept going with. So maybe Irsay has learned some lessons.
Connor, would you put equally the Texans and the Colts in the same bracket because of the way the organizations are run with ownership and interference? Like, are the Colts still a little bit further down the road? Like, you'd imagine the Colts could rebound quicker than you'll see the Texans rebound, judging by what we spoke about so far.
Yeah, I think as we're talking about two head coaching hires that we both really like, and I'm sure a lot of fans of other teams, had they had the fortune to inherit either of those as their new head coaches, would have been really happy. I think I'd probably marginally rather be in Shane Steichen's position than in D'Amico Ryan's position, I have to say. But all of that depends on your quarterback. Like, if either one of them hits, then that's going to make everything a hell of a lot easier. I know it's the most simplistic thing to say in NFL terms, but once that bit's working, you have the headspace to fix a lot of other things along the way. I would. Yeah, I think Steichen, and I think he's hired well, as I said, with Jim Bob Cooter as OC. I can see that working out well. Obviously, Bobby Slowick is a rookie offensive coordinator in Houston or with the Texans. So that's it remains to be seen whether that's going to work out. You have a better idea what you're going to get with Steichen's hire in Jim Bob Cooter. So I, on paper, see that as being probably the better situation of the two, but you're right to call out the similarities between them in terms of ownership and general manager behavior over the last couple of years, which have both set these teams up in very difficult spots and haven't frankly put them in position to succeed. And for both of those fan bases, I hope there are sunnier days ahead.
This division